controls, not as a technical luxury, but as a governance necessity. Another clause is about clause 7, which talks about support. Clause 7 is about the organizational infrastructure that makes governance possible. Resources, competency, awareness, communication, and documentation. XCI is deeply dependent on this infrastructure. A technically sophisticated SHAP analysis is of a limited governance value if the people reviewing it does not understand what it means. Organizations need personnel who can bridge machine learning and governance and people who speak both languages. They also need robust documentation around what does this model do, what data was it trained on, and what are its layer. Even a technically transparent model remains opaque from a governance and audit perspective. So clause 7 is where explainability moves from a technical capability to an organization's capability. Just a second. I'm sorry for the glitch. I had to charge my laptop. Okay. Okay, so the next clause is clause 8, which talks about operations. Clause 8 covers the day-to-day operational management of AI systems like development, deployment, ongoing monitoring across the system lifecycle. This is where explainability becomes more particularly visible because during development, tools like SHAP or LIME are used to understand and validate model behaviors before they are deployed. So during deployment, explanation logs, decision records are maintained, creating an audit trail that regulators or auditors will later rely upon. And during monitoring, explainability tools help detect something critically important, that is model drift. AI systems do not remain static over the period of time. We understood that AI systems become drift as the data pattern shift, model behavior can change in ways that are invisible without the right tools. So XCI is what makes those challenges detectable and actionable. Another important clause is clause 9, which talks about performance evaluation. Clause 9 requires organizations to monitor, measure, and evaluate whether their AI management system is actually working or not through performance tracking, internal audits, or management reviews. So XAI becomes enabler of assurance. Auditor cannot effectively evaluate what they cannot understand. Governance team cannot assess fairness or compliance in a system which they cannot interrogate. Transparent, well-documented AI systems are fundamentally easier to audit, easier to review, and easier to hold accountable to. So in this sense, explainability is not just a good ethics, but it is also good audit hygiene. Next clause is clause 10, which is about improvement. The final clause, which addresses what every mature management system must do, learn, adapt, and improve over time. AI systems evolve, models are retrained, data distributions shift, new use cases emerge. XCI is what allows organizations to understand how their models are changing and whether those changes are moving in the right direction or not. When something goes wrong, any unexpected outcome, a biased prediction, or challenge decision happens in an organization, XR tools help the tracing of this root cause of this problem. The root cause analysis then feeds directly into corrective action and the governance improves. So without XCI, organizations are left guessing, and with it, they can diagnose, correct, and strengthen their management system. So, stepping back and looking at the full clause structure, a clear picture emerges that XAI is not confined to one part of ISO. It supports the entire governance lifecycle, from understanding risk to communicating system behavior to enabling oversight to driving continuous improvement. It is not a technical technique bolted onto a side of an AI system. It is the core governance control woven into the fabric of responsible AI management. And the standard goes further still. ISO 42001's Annexure A provides detailed controls across AI system lifecycle, and explainability connects directly to several of those control areas as well. So, we understood how explainability aligns with each clauses of ISO 42001's management system structure, but the standard goes a step further. We have Annexure A. So, Annexure A provides a set of detailed practical governance controls covering everything from policy design and data governance to stakeholder communication and responsible use. And when you examine these controls carefully, explainability shows up not just as a single requirement in one corner of the framework, but as an enabling mechanism running across multiple control domains. Let us look at the most relevant ones. A.2, which is talking about AI policies. Every governance framework begins with the policy, the formal declaration of what an organization expects of itself. Annexure A requires that organizations to establish clear policies governing how AI systems are developed, deployed, and monitored. XCI must be written into these policies explicitly. It is not enough to say that the organization is committed to responsible AI. Policies need to define concrete expectations. For instance, that AI systems used in high impact decision must produce interpretable outputs, or or that the explanation mechanism must be documented and available for review. When XCI is embedded in policy, it stops being just technical aspiration and becomes organization's obligation with accountability attached to it. Another control is A.5, which is about AI system impact assessment. Before an AI system is deployed, Annexure A expects that organizations to assess its potential impact on individuals, on groups, or on society. So this means examining risks such as bias, discriminatory outcomes, or unintended social consequences. So this is where XCI tool earns their keep in a very practical sense. By examining which variables are driving a model's predictions and how much weight each one carries, organizations can detect before deployment whether certain groups are being systematically disadvantaged or not. So think of it as a pre-flight safety check. XCI allows you to look inside the system and ask a difficult question while there is still time to make corrections. So without it, impact assessments become largely superficial. Organizations can describe what a system is supposed to do but cannot demonstrate how it actually behaves. Another important control in Annexure is A.6, that is AI system life cycle management. AI governance is not a one-time event at the point of deployment. Annexure A recognizes that AI systems must be managed across their entire life cycle, from initial design stage through development, testing, validation, deployment, and ongoing monitoring. Explainability has a role to play at every stage of this life cycle. During design, it shapes decisions about which type of model is appropriate. Sometimes a slightly less accurate but more interpretable model is the right governance choice. During development, explainability tools help developers understand what the model is actually learning from those data and catch problems early. During validation, they help surface unstable or biased decision patterns before the system goes live. And during monitoring, they act as an ongoing early warning system, detecting when the model behavior is shifting in ways that may not be yet be visible in headline performance metrics. Explainability in this context is not a project deliverable, it is a continuous operational discipline. Next is the 8.7, that is data for AI systems. AI systems are not only as good and as fair as the data they learn from. Annexure A therefore places a significant emphasis on data quality, data governance, and data traceability. Explainability connects directly to this control area. When a model produces unexpected or concerning outputs, one of the first questions is, what did the training data teach it? XAI technique allows organizations to trace the relationship between data patterns and model behavior to understand, for instance, whether a historical imbalance in training data is causing the model to systematically favor one group over another or not. So this is the Amazon hiring tool problem, revisited at the governance level. Responsible data governance and explainability are not separate disciplines. They reinforce each other. Another control is 8.8, information for interested parties. AI systems affect many different audiences: customers who receive automated decisions, regulators who demand accountability, auditors who require evidence for consistent behavior, employees who interact with AI assisted tools, and individuals whose life may be materially affected by these algorithms. Each of these audiences needs information, but they need it in different forms at different levels of technical depth. A regulator needs documentation showing how the system operates and what safeguards are in place. So, a customer needs a plain language explanation as to why a specific decision was made about them. An auditor needs evidence. And without any discriminatory pattern, explainability is what makes all of these communications possible. And without it, organizations face a fundamental problem. They have deployed a system that affects people, but they cannot meaningfully account for what it is doing. Another control is 8.9, responsible use of AI systems. Annexure A also addresses something that is often overlooked in technical governance: the behavior of the humans who use AI systems. Even a well-designed, well-explained AI system can be misused if the people relying on it does not understand its capabilities or limitations. So this is the problem of automated decisions, the very human tendency to defer to any algorithm, to treat its output as authoritative simply because it was produced by a machine. XAI directly counters this tendency. When users understand why a system produces a particular output, what factors draw it, what assumptions underlying it, where it might be unreliable, they are far better equipped to exercise genuine judgment rather than simply just rubber stamping whatever the model suggests. Responsible use requires informed users. Informed users requires explainability. So looking across this annexure controls areas, the pattern is unmistakable. XCI is not a single control sitting in one corner of governance framework. It is a cross-cutting capability that simultaneously supports bias detection, impact assessment, life cycle oversight, stakeholder communication, data governance, and responsible use. Strengthen explainability and you strengthen multiple governance objectives at once. This is the insight that reframes the entire conversation. XCI is not a feature for engineers. It is governance control for organization. It is the mechanism that allows CI system to move out of the realm of opaque technical experimentation and into the realm of structured board level accountability. In my next section, we will translate all of this into practical governance expectations because ultimately the goal of explainability is not simply to help data scientists understand those models. It is to help organizations govern AI responsibly at the highest level of decision making, which is translating into boardroom translation. Boardroom translation of XCI as a governance control. Until this point, we have explored XCI largely through the lens of technical methods or governance framework. But there is a critical shift that organizations must now make, and it is less about technology, but more about a leadership. XCI cannot remain a conversational confined to data scientists or machine learning engineers. It must be translated into a language that boards, audit committees, and senior management can understand, interrogate, and act upon. Because here is the fundamental truth. Governance responsibility for AI systems does not sit with the engineering team. It sits with the organization's leadership. So consider how boards govern financial reporting. They do not personally prepare the accounts. They do not reconcile ledgers or run audit tests behind it. But they are expected to satisfy themselves that the organization has robust internal control, transparent reporting mechanism, and reliable audit processes. They ask the right questions, they demand credible answers, and they hold management accountable for both. AI governance is beginning to follow precisely the same pattern. Boards are not expected to understand the mathematics behind the neural networks or to evaluate the technical metrics of one machine learning architecture over another. But they must be able to ask and receive current answer to a small number of fundamental governance questions. First one is where in the organization are AI system currently being used? Which decisions are being influenced or made by the systems? What risk arise from those automated decisions? And critically, if a decision is challenged, can the organization explain it? The last question is the one that separates organization with genuine AI governance from those that merely have AI deployment. If the answer is no, if the organization cannot explain its automated decisions, the exposure is real and multidimensional. First risk is regulatory risk, which arises when authorities demand transparency and the organization has no coherent account to offer. Another risk is reputational risk, which follows when automated decisions appear arbitrarily, unfair, or discriminatory in public eye. The another risk is legal risk, which emerges when affected individuals challenge algorithmic outcomes and organization cannot produce a defensible record to it. Another risk is operational risk, which compounds quietly when employees rely on systems that they do not understand, accepting outputs uncritically without the judgment that human oversight is meant to provide. So these are not theoretical scenarios. As the cases we discussed earlier demonstrate, they are already playing out in courtrooms, in regulatory proceedings, or in media. So this is why XCI, when properly implemented, functions as a governance control, not just merely as a technical feature. Think about how organizations govern information security. They do not simply deploy firewalls and hope for the best. They implement controls, maintain logs, conduct audits, and report to the board on the state of its security posture. The board does not need to understand protocols that are deployed, but it needs confidence that controls are in place and they are working and that someone is accountable if they fails. So XAI creates the same governance architecture for algorithmic decision. When XAI mechanisms are embedded into AI systems and governance processes, something important becomes possible. Both gain meaningful explanation, visibility into how AI systems are influencing organizational decision, not through raw model outputs, but through clear, structured reporting. Audit teams can examine system behavior and assess whether it aligns with policy and regulatory expectations or not. Risk committees can evaluate whether models are introducing bias, operational fragility, or compliance exposure or not. And when regulators come asking questions, as they increasingly will, the organization have substantive documented answers ready. So let us see the practical implementation roadmap. At this point, it is very natural. Uh, a very natural question arises that the governance case for XAI is clear. The regulatory direction is clear. ISO framework is clear. But where does that organization actually begin? The good news is that implementation does not require an overnight transformation. It follows a logical, structured progression. And an organization at any stage of AI maturity can find their starting point. First, know what you have done. Build an AI inventory. You cannot govern what you have not mapped. The first step is deceptively simpler, but consistently underestimated. Create a comprehensive inventory of every AI system currently in use across the organization. Most organizations are surprised by what this exercise reveals. AI is rarely confined to one department or one obvious use case. It may be operating quietly in marketing, analytics, fraud detection, recruitment, screening, customer service automation, pricing, engines, credit risk models, or supply chain optimization. Some of the systems will have been deliberately deployed, and others will have arrived through vendor platforms or software packages, and which are invisible. Until a leadership has a clear, complete picture of its AI landscape, meaningful governance is simply not possible. Uh, Step 2 is prioritize by risk. Classify your AI systems. So once you know what you have, the next step is to determine where to focus your governance energy. Not every AI model carries the same risk, and not every AI model requires the same level of explainability. A system that requires any internal training content carries a very different stakes than one that determines credit eligibility, screening job applications, or support clinical decisions. So, classify your AI systems by their potential impact on individuals, regulatory exposure, and reputational sensitivity. High impact systems go to the front of the queue. Lower risk systems can follow a lighter touch governance approach. This risk-based prioritization is consistent with ISO 42001's planning requirement, and it ensures that the governance resources are directed where they matter the most. Step 3 is to open the black box. Apply explainability techniques. For your high-impact models, this is where XAI Toolbox comes into play. Depending on the nature of the model and decision context, organizations can deploy tools such as SHAP to understand which variables are driving predictions, LIME to generate explanation for individual decisions, counterfactual analysis to answer the question like what would need to change for a different outcome, and a model card to document system behavior, limitation, and appropriate use case. So goal at this stage is not a technical perfection. It is operational clarity, ensuring that the people responsible for governing these systems can actually understand what they are doing and that affected individuals can receive meaningful explanation when required. Step 4 is building the audit trail. Establish documentation and decision logs. Explainability without documentation is explainability that cannot be demonstrated. An organization needs structured records that captures the full governance context of each AI system and its significant decisions that AI influences. This means maintaining a documentation of model design and purpose, training data sources, and known limitation, model version, and change history. So they support internal governance reviews, enables external audit, satisfy regulatory requests, and provide the evidence that is based needed to investigate and learn from the unexpected outcomes. AI system with a good documentation is an AI system that can be held to account. Step 5 is keep humans in the loop. Establish an oversight mechanism. So for every decision that an AI system is making, there has to be a person, there has to be a human in the loop. There has to be a responsible person in an organization to blame upon, which can be produced before a regulator. Last one is embed, don't bolt on. Integrate into your management system. So the last step is perhaps the most important one for long-term, long sustainable organization. Explainability and AI governance should not exist as a standalone project or a parallel work stream. They must be integrated into an organization's broader risk management framework and management system processes. For organization implementing ISO 42001, this means ensuring that AI governance connects naturally with existing risk committees, internal audit functions, policy frameworks, and board reporting structures. When XCI is embedded into how organizations processes rather than bolted on as if afterthought, it becomes durable, scalable, and genuinely effective. So when these 6 steps are taken together, something important happens. XCI stops being an isolated technical exercise performed by data scientists or technical persons in isolation. It becomes a structured governance capability, one that gives leadership visibility, gives auditors evidence, gives regulators confidence, and gives affected individuals the explanation that they are entitled to receive. So this brings us to the closing of this session. Let me close with a reflection that I think puts everything we have discussed today into its proper perspective. So, over the past several decades, organizations have built sophisticated systems to manage financial accountability. We develop internal controls, audit committees, reporting standards, governance framework, not because finance is inherently untrustworthy, but because decisions involving money are affecting people and people deserves accountability.